Hey students, in this video I am going to show you how to make a CO2 car from start to finish, and that includes opening up your template that we downloaded previously in class. First thing I want to do is I'm going to wait for all of my AppStream to open within my Chrome. That means I've gone into my ISD 728 and I've waited through my Rapid Identity Portal loading process. That took on my computer about 8 minutes today. Next thing, you definitely want to be double checking to make sure that under the My Files button up on the top that you have your Google Drive added. Just a reminder, if you don't have that Google Drive added, you won't be able to find any of your files that you've downloaded and plopped into your Google Drive. Now that I am in Inventor, I know that my drive is added. I'm going to open up my Dragster block template that was downloaded. So I'm going to go to the word File. I am going to go to the word Open, and I'm going to look in this open box. Now the last time I went into my Autodesk Inventor, I did look in my Design and Modeling folder that I added to my Google Drive. I'm just going to review how I got there. I go to this Look In box, and I go to this PC. Once I click on this PC, I can see my Google Drive. I can either double click on it, on the words, or I can click on the words once and then click on Open. Once I'm in my Google Drive, I have to go then into My Drive with a double click. And I have sorted out my drive with a Design and Modeling folder specifically for this class. So I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to do a quick double click. And now that I've finally gotten into that Design and Modeling folder on my Google Drive, I see the template that I downloaded last week. If you get into your drive and you don't have this Dragster block template, what that tells me is you haven't yet downloaded the template from Schoology, and then within your Chromebook, on the Files side of your Chromebook, you haven't moved that download from your Chromebook files onto your Google Drive. Remember, there's quite a few steps that happen in the background before this Dragster block template shows up in my drive when I'm in my Inventor. So I have this template. I'm going to just do a double click on the words. Whoops, let's try that again. Do a double click, and here it opens. You can see that I haven't done any editing to my Dragster block template. Last week, I asked you to add some stuff to the side of your Dragster, and if you have that already edited, you can just fast forward to the next part of the video, because in this video, I'm going to show you how to make an entire car. Another choice is, if you like what the side of my car looks like in this plan, you can also choose to re-download the template and start from scratch. That's always a choice. So I'm just going to start from the very beginning. So to do that, it's kind of a repetitive process. What I'm going to do is tell it to start a 2D sketch. And after I do that, I need to click on the side of my car. And it takes a little while to render. Now I'm going to move my car back to the center of my screen. And now I have a couple of choices. My easiest tool to use is just the straight line tool. I showed you that in our previous video, so I'm going to get a little bit fancier. And I'm going to try out this arc tool. And right now I have my 3-point arc tool as an option. And then another really favorite tool that I have is under my line tool. I have this spline, and I prefer the Control Vertex spline tool, but some students like this one as well. I'm going to show you this spline tool. So now that I have my tool selected and I've started my 2D sketch, I know I'm in 2D sketch because I have a green check mark here. I'm going to look for where the power plant hole is. So if we were to race this car in real life, I wouldn't be able to cut into this hole, because if I did, my CO2 canister would go flying through the air. All right, so I can't cut into that. So now I'm going to get started with my spline tool. I'm going to click to start, and then I'm just going to click a few times. Each time I click with my spline tool, it's going to get a different curve for that tool. And what happened to it? Oh, there it goes. It's just a little bit delayed. And I'm going to come up, and I'm going to make a big arch. Now I know that I've cut off this front hole, but I'm going to show you that in this video as well. So that's all I want to do with my spline. So I'm going to click my check mark, and I now have a really great curve for my line. But if I go to finish sketch right now, I won't be able to extrude this, because in order for my extrude tool to work, I need to connect all the way around my shape for that extrude to work. I also can't click on Start in 2D Sketch and make that line around the outside on a separate sketch. Right now would probably be a good time for you to pause the video if you haven't yet and follow a few steps. Just a reminder, when you're following video tutorials, you never want to watch that video from start to finish. You want to watch a little bit. When you get to a part, you want to pause it, and then you want to resume that after you've tried out that step. So I have that. Now I want to finish this out. So I have to go back into sketch 7. Like I just said, if I start another 2D sketch, it is not going to extrude. I have to finish my whole sketch on the same sketch. So to do that, I'm going to go to sketch 7. I can either right click on a mouse or 2-finger click with my trackpad, and I'm going to edit this sketch. It's going to take a little while to turn around, and now I'm going to go back up to the top, and I'm just going to switch to my straight line tool. And with my straight line tool, I'm going to connect all the way around the outside with my shape. So I'm going to go to the end of the line. I'm going to look for the green circle. I'm going to click to start. I'm going to go almost straight up. I'm going to go on the diagonal of my car. I'm going to go down, making sure I include the entire 3D portion of that dragster block. And then I'm going to look for a green dot again, so I know that I'm back to the end of the line. If I don't go to the end of the line, I'm not going to have a complete shape. Another nice reminder that I have a complete shape is that at the end of each line, I have a yellow square. Notice on my spline, it's one continuous line, so there's just a yellow square at each end of my spline. But each time my straight line changes direction, I have a yellow square. That is a great reminder that it's all enclosed. So now I'm going to finish my sketch. Again, this would be another good spot to stop and try. Now that I've finished my sketch, this is also a good time for me to save. So I'm just going to click on my little icon right here. This weird little icon is actually my save icon, so I'm going to click on that. Just takes a little time. Notice that I did save and nothing shows up on my screen. That is totally normal. We don't get a notification when we save on Autodesk Inventor. Okay, here we go. Moving on to the next step. Now I'm going to go to my extrude button. So I'm going to click on extrude. And notice this whole thing turned blue and it popped towards me. That's because this is the first time I have extruded on this, and the default feature is to extrude 10 millimeters towards the front of the object. So now I have to change some properties of this extrude. Notice that I'm extruding sketch 7. I have my input geometry selected, and now I'm going to go to behavior. In the behavior portion, instead of it coming towards me, the default, I want it to go flipped or away from me. So I'm just going to click on that. Now notice it turns red and it goes away from me and it's starting to cut into my block. That's exactly what I want it to do. Now the distance of it going flipped is a distance of 10 millimeters. So I have a couple choices here. I can either type in 10 millimeters, I can change it to the default that shows up here of 50 millimeters, which is a little beyond, or I have some other choices. I can do through all, that'll go the exact depth of my shape, or I can go to a specific distance. I am going to leave mine on through all. It's going to be flipped. Now under the output, Boolean is a fancy math term that you'll learn in a high school class in math, but at this point, most of you are going to be choosing cut for the Boolean. We don't want to join it because it's already there. We don't want to intersect it because then all we're going to have is the part that we're actually wanting to cut. So we want this cut for our output. So under our properties, we want to go to behavior and we want it to be flipped. For our distance A, we want it to be through all. And for our boolean, we want it to be cut. Now I'm going to click on OK. So you can see now my dragster is looking pretty great, but maybe you noticed my front axle hole completely disappeared. So in this next portion, I'm going to show you how to fix that. But again, this would be a good place for you to stop, go over to your AppStream and try out a couple of steps. Okay, so hopefully you tried out those steps. Now, I'm going to go to the axle hole portion and I'm going to move that front axle. Notice when I'm over here on my model, if I hover on axle hole, I have two holes that show up green on my CO2 car. I'm going to actually move both of these axle holes. I don't want this rear axle to be quite so far from the back of my car, so I'm going to move both of them. To do that, I'm going to either right click on my mouse or two-finger click on my trackpad. And since this is the 3D thing I am changing, I'm actually not going to change that 3D part because I don't want to change the size of the hole. I want to change the sketch because the sketch is how I know where they're placed. So I'm going to go and click on a regular click with Edit Sketch. When my edit sketch shows up, I only want to change the numbers on the bottom, my 60 and my 185. I don't want to change my 9 millimeters. That changes how tall the holes are. I want to leave them at that height. So like I said, I first want to change this one. I want to move it farther back. I'm going to double click on 60. My edit dimension tool shows up and I'm going to type in a smaller number because I want it to move closer to the back. I'm going to change this to, let's just try 45. I typed in 45 on my keyboard. I can either hit enter on my keyboard or I could have clicked on that green check mark. Now, if you're really observant, you may have noticed that this hole moved as well. And that was on purpose because I didn't change this number yet. So let's see what happened on my 3D part. So I still moved that 15 millimeters, but I can't see my axle hole in the front yet. Let's hover there. It moved closer, but it didn't move enough. That must mean I have to change it a lot. So again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to edit this sketch with either a right click on my mouse or a two-finger click on my trackpad. I'm going to edit the sketch. And I'm going to move this one now. It was at 185. It needs to move a lot. So I'm going to actually lower it all the way down to 150 millimeters. Type it in, hit enter on my keyboard, click on finish sketch. Oh my gosh, that was like a really close guess. I'm going to go to the orientation cube on the side here and I'm going to see if it's almost to the top arc. It's not quite, and I want this back a little further, so I'm going to do one more change. I'm going to move this back another 15 millimeters. So I'm going to type in 30 and hit enter. I'm going to click on finish sketch. Great. This is back maybe a teeny bit too far, but I like where this went. So I'm going to leave it. I'm going to go back to my home button and look at it from a different angle. This is going to be another great point for me to save my work. So I just clicked on my save icon. Great. Now, I don't want this square corner on the back. There's a couple of ways I can make it not square. I am actually going to just fillet that back corner. So I'm going to grab my fillet tool. I'm going to rotate to the back. I'm going to click on this edge here. And I am going to make that quite a large radius. I can either move it like that, or I can type in a number. But I like to edit it when I'm moving. That looks really good. So what is that, like 16.5? I kind of like that one. So I'm going to click on apply. And I'm going to click on cancel because I don't want to do any more fillets right now. Notice once I filleted that, I didn't cut into here. I definitely didn't cut into my power plant. But if I look at it from the front view, which is the side of the car, it looks really spiffy. I like how that looks. A lot more aerodynamic. I might go in and fillet the edge there later on, this edge. But I don't want to fill it just yet. I don't want to fill it that quite yet. So now I need to make some features on the top, because if I look at the top of my car, it's just a plain old rectangle. So here's a good point for me to pause my video, to do some saving, and we'll jump back in after you've made some changes. Okay, so hopefully you made a couple more changes on your car. Our next step is to add some features to the top of your car. In order to do that, we have to turn on some visibility for some parts on your model side over here. I don't know if you noticed, but there's this weird thing called a symmetrical work plane. Look at what happens when I hover on it. When I hover on it, let's go to the top view. When I hover, or if I click on it, it gets a line down the center of my car. And if I go back to my 3D view, it kind of cuts my car in half. That is super important at this point. So we're going to turn it on. To do that, you go on your model, you hover on the symmetrical work plane. You can either right click on a mouse, 2-finger click on a trackpad, and then you're going to go about 2/3 of the way down the list, or I'm sorry, 1/3, and you'll click on visibility. Once you do that, look at it, turns into like a grayish yellow parallelogram on your screen. That's exactly what I want it to do. I'm going to do the same thing with my top view work plane. Look at what happens when I hover there. There's this green floating piece of paper floating. So I'm going to right click with my mouse or 2-finger click with the trackpad, and I'm going to turn that one on as well. Great. Now I'm ready to start planning out the top of my car. So to do that, I need to start a sketch. So I'm going to click on Start a 2D Sketch. And now it's waiting. It's like, okay, you want me to start a 2D sketch, but where? So I want to click on my top view work plane, and I'm going to wait for it to turn green. Oh, good. There it is. Once it's green, I click on that green surface, and it rotates it. Now, I never like working with it like that, so I'm going to go to the orientation cube, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, just like that. And now I'm going to use my mouse and I'm going to scroll in. Okay, great. Now I can start sketching out, and I'm only going to sketch out what I want half of it to look like. I'm going to do this with that spline tool again. So I'm going to go to spline. And now I have to find where those axle holes went. I moved my axle holes first because I have to make sure my car is nice and wide where this axle hole is. I also have to make sure I'm not cutting into that power plant. So I'm going to start right about here. And where did that go? Should have a line showing up. Oh, there we go. It finally rendered. All right, there it is. So I'm going to arc over to here, and then I'm going to have it come out. I don't want to click on the line. Oops, I accidentally did, but that's okay. So I'm going to have it go out. Great. Now I'm going to click on my check mark. And I'm going to go to a straight line tool, and I'm just going to draw a straight line here. And then I'm going to go back up to the top, and I'm going to change to my spline tool. It's so important when I'm switching tools and I'm switching line styles that I look for that green circle before I begin. Don't want to cut into that. All right, so I'm going to go right about here, and then I'm going to start arcing. Oh, I can't go in that far. Okay, I'm going to start arcing in, and then I'm going to have it go in. Now this is really important. I am not going to have it pass over that center point, because if I do, I will totally cut away at my car. So now I'm going to go all the way down the length of my car, because I want to have it be really narrow in the center. And then I'm going to have it come back out, because I know about in this point, I have some more axle holes. There's one, there's my other. Ooh, gosh, good thing I got going on that. And then I'm going to click on my check mark. Now I'm going to go back to that straight line tool. So I'm going to grab my line tool, and I'm going to look for my green circle. I'm going to click to start. I'm going to draw a nice flat surface, and then I'm going to switch back to my spline tool. Hopefully you can't hear that humming in the background. If you can, I'm so sorry. I've asked my kiddos to be nice and quiet, but they're having a hard time with that right now. Now I have a nice spline tool. I'm going to go almost all the way out, and then I'm going to have it come in to a point. Oh my gosh, that's going to look really neat. I'm going to click on my check mark. And now I can't quite finish my sketch yet. That's because I have to close this whole thing in. So I'm going to go back to my straight line tool one last time, and I'm going to go around the outside, and I'm going to find the green circle. Once I have my green circle, I'm going to click. I'm going to go straight down, and I am going to completely enclose this around the outside. And I'm looking for my green circles at each point. Now I'm done. They changed from green circles to yellow squares on each end. If I were to go to this line, I know it would show up as a yellow square if I were to click on it. But now I'm just going to click on Finish Sketch. Perfect. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Extrude. And I'm going to go, instead of default, I'm going to go flipped. I'm going to go down and I'm going to choose distance through all. And that doesn't seem to be working because I don't have the right boolean. I'm going to switch from add to cut. And bam! Look at that. So I'm going through all. I'm going flipped. And I'm choosing the cut boolean. Now I can click on OK. And that's what half of my car looks like. So again, I'm going to save my work. Now that I'm done saving my work, here is one of my favorite parts about this. I am going to mirror this. So I'm going to go to my mirror tool. And first thing I want to do is say, hey, which features do you want to mirror? Well, I want to mirror this. So I'm going to find that. I'm going to make it turn green. Now that I have it blue, I'm going to go to my mirror plane. Let's try that again. There we go. It needs to be on the button, not on the words. Notice I have that center symmetrical work plane. It's highlighted green. That's the one I want it to have for my mirror. So I'm going to click on that. Great, I have this nice green preview of what it's going to look like. Now I can click on OK. So now my car is pretty much done. I'm going to turn off this visibility. I'm going to turn off this symmetrical work plane so those are not in my way of my preview. So I have a really slick looking car right now. Really like how this turned out. The only other thing that I would probably do is before I totally finish this up, I would definitely go in and fillet some corners on my car. But before I do that, I'm going to save. Again, at this point, you definitely don't need to do this whole video in one day. If you need to take a little break, pause this video, take a note of where you're at on time, and then open it up at a different point. My last thing I'm going to do for this car, as far as designing goes, is I'm going to fillet the edges. So I'm going to grab my fillet tool, and I'm going to just start selecting some edges and applying that fillet. I know right here I want to have a fillet, but if I rotate to the back of my car, that is way too much of a fillet, and it defaulted to the last amount. I'm going to fillet just that much, and I'm going to click on Apply. Great. Now I'm going to fillet some vertical edges. I'm going to fillet this one, and I want it to be symmetrical, so I could either go over here or I could mirror it later. I'm going to actually do that. I'm going to choose this one, and I'm going to increase that fillet. I can either, whoops, I'm scrolling right now to zoom. I can either slide it in and get a nice preview. Whoops, there we go. Or I could have typed in a number, but I kind of like how that turned out. I'm going to change it over here as an example. I'm going to type in 8. Oh, that looks great. And I'm going to click on Apply. And I'm going to do the same thing here and here. This one's a little less because these holes are closer to the edge. So I'm going to make this one smaller just because I didn't center it perfectly. I'm going to try out 4. That's a little close to that, but I'm going to leave it. I'm going to click on Apply. And now I am going to try out this really long arc. So I'm going to click on that entire thing. Notice it selected all of it, and I'm just going to try out a couple of things. Oh, it doesn't even like it, so I'm going to click on. Whoa, it did. It was just slow at rendering. I'm going to type in like 2 here and see what happens. When it turns red, it is not going to let you do that feature or that amount. I'm going to try 3. I think that's going to work. I'm just going to click on apply and see what happens. Oh, yep, it failed. So I'm going to click on cancel. And I'm just going to try out some other parts. I could change how this is going, but how it's selecting everything, but I'm just going to leave it for now. I'm going to click on cancel. And now I'm going to mirror again. So I have to turn on my symmetrical work plane. And I'm going to choose my mirror tool. And I'm in my features right now, so I want it to mirror this and this. And I'm going to choose my mirror plane. And I'm going to choose that center mirror plane. And it's not giving me a preview, so I wonder what it's doing. Let's try that one more time. So I have my mirror plane on, and I'm going to go to mirror tool. I have my features. Let's go back over to this side. I like how it zoomed out. That'll probably be a little bit better. That one and that one. Perfect. And now I'm going to go to my mirror plane, click on that in the center. Oh, it didn't select. Let's try that again. And then, oh, good. Now I'm having that green preview on the other side, so I can click on OK. Okay, I think that looks good. I'm going to click on save, and I'm going to go back. House. Notice how when I click on the house, it zooms in a little bit. And I'm going to hide that middle symmetrical work plane. Oh, this is looking really good. I like how that's turning out so far. In our next video, I'm going to show you how to place this CO2 car into a drawing like we did with our inventor bracket.